All right. At least we're gonna have a pretty good session tonight.
Hey, is everybody on?
Everybody's getting on. We got a pretty good session. We're live right now. So
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
We hot.
I see Chucky Brown and my main man Day is with the Roy Scott. So we're excited, man. Thank you for everybody joining us. We're excited because we do this each and every Tuesday, and we always have some provocative conversations. And tonight, of course, we got a usual suspects, myself, K Mac, Jasmine, and Chucky Brown. And the guest today is a guy that we got involved with almost 7 years ago when we was on weekends doing the sports shop.
Right.
And it turns out he knows Chucky from a whole nother relationship. And we're gonna get into that as well. But you know, with the backdrop of the Confederate flag and Bubba Wallace and what he's going with NASCAR right now, I was thinking, I said, and K Meg and I was talking, I said, you know what? Let's see if we can reach out to Warrick. Actually, it was like a couple of weeks ago. Then we finally connected, even before all this started happening, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, he agreed to come on. And again, we're talking about Warrick Scott Sr., who is heads of the Wendell Scott Foundation, who does some great things in keeping his grandfather's name alive, who was the first African American to ever participate in NASCAR and win a NASCAR race. And by the way, I watched Grease Lightning again today, which was phenomenal. Okay. so I can get familiar with what's going on. But again, without further ado, welcome to the Sports Shop Drop In. Warrick Scott Sr. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's happening, everybody? Pleasure to be here. Always good to reconnect with my Raleigh Durham area family and everything. So it's good vibes. Thanks for having me.
So let's get started. And again, by now everybody's heard about the situation with the investigation with the news, and it turns out it wasn't anything. And that's good. I think that's a good thing. We're going to talk about that later. But the Confederate flag being banned from NASCAR, and just the whole backdrop, Warrick, of what's going on in NASCAR. You obviously you was born into it. We were very interested in your perspective on where we are right now in NASCAR.
I mean, progression, I think you can't take away from the Confederate flag coming down. Mm-hmm. You know, that's true progression. Right. You can't take away from that. You know, I hate kind of what's happening right now with Bubba. I have not been on social media since this has happened. Okay. I was just coming off of another interview, so I'm really not as prepared to speak about what currently just happened as I should be. I'm not sure how much that equates to Bubba's, position. I don't think he had anything to do with the noose being displayed or not.
Right.
This appears to be something that's going to be a distraction based upon NASCAR's overall mission of evolution. As it appears. Naturally, we're on the call because of the request that I made to NASCAR 2 years ago. So the fact that I'm even having this conversation in general, shows a lot needs to continue to happen, right? So we just have to, this is an evolving piece, and we'll have to wait, and see what the next findings are, what the next, statements are.
Yeah, I would tell you that you don't want to look at Twitter right now, because it's amazing what people are saying about Bubba, and Bubba had nothing to do with it. I mean, he didn't even know it was even existed. So we got a lot of work to do, but we're gonna get into that. But we're gonna open it up, guys, and just Warrick, talk about your grandfather and where he went to the sport.
He was the first African American NASCAR driver and team owner to compete in NASCAR full time. He was a Virginia Dixie Circuit legend before NASCAR was originally coined. I think they started running what was called the Grand National Series at that time. Wendell Scott was a hell of a man in general. He's a veteran,
Mm.
father, grandfather, beloved uncle, cousin. He was well traveled. He was dedicated, and he was fearless.
Mm.
These are some of the things that come to mind, when I think about him. He was the subject of a major motion picture called Grease Lightning. Pryor played my grandfather. Pam Grier played my grandmother. The film also featured civil rights icon Julian Bond, Mayor Maynard Jackson from Atlanta, from Hartsfield Jackson Airport was also in the film. Old Bridges, Cleavon Little, Vincent Gardenia, Roberta Flack on the soundtrack. So that's some of his distinctions within Hollywood. I was fortunate enough to work with my good friends at Disney Pixar to create a character that was featured in the Cars 3 film, and it's called River. As you can probably see behind me right here, you see on the wall there, and here's another homage to him there on the wall there. You see the River Scott poster and his image. So these are some of the things that he was able to do within pop culture. He raced his entire NASCAR career without the benefit of sponsorship. He never had a sponsor. Not sponsored because of the color of his skin. His record is impeccable when you consider the racial discrimination he had to face and the imminent danger that he and his sons were in as they traveled to different countries. Different tracks around the country. 495 career starts, 147 top 10 finishes, 20 top 5 finishes. He finished, I want to say, in point standings in 1966. He finished 6th in all of NASCAR. So you talking about a true legend. You talking about an engineering genius, a true vanguard of the sport. And all of this took place before the Civil Rights era, during the Civil Rights movement, and even after the Civil Rights movement. Okay, it wasn't until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that he was even allowed entry into all of the NASCAR tracks. Okay, when he won the Jacksonville 200, he ran 2 more laps. I read an article in Ebony magazine from 1966. I found the other day where he said he ran 3. He said he ran 3 more laps than the rest of the field. But when the race was over with, when they waved the checker flag, NASCAR officials gave the trophy to a man named Buck Baker, and they gave the trophy to my grandfather. They did not acknowledge him as the victor. They did give him his purse money. He earned $1,150 for that race. I'm a historian as well, and also that same day in history is the day that Malcolm X made the statement with regards to President Kennedy's assassination and the chickens coming home to roost. He made a statement of that. Right. All of those things happened same day. It was a Sunday, December 1st, Sunday. We're celebrating the 57th anniversary of his first victory. We have a fundraiser, a legacy gala, where we have a fundraiser, and we're celebrating the 57th anniversary of his victory this year. Past 2 years, we've had Layla Hathaway perform our first year, and last year we had Robert Glasper and Anthony David perform in honor of my grandfather. So that's a quick crash course.
Oh, that's great, man.
On my granddad.
Yeah, Warrick, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, you get an opportunity to go around the country and have this conversation with people and talk about your grandfather and talk about the significance of the sport. What's some of the most surprising questions or things that you have to talk about as you talk about your grandfather's immersion into the sport and his involvement?
Unfortunately for me, I have to relive many of the atrocities he faced. But that's part of my walk. As I tell my grandfather's story, I cannot omit what he went through, what my father and my uncles went through, and their sacrifice within the civil rights movement. And, every time they went to a track, it was a form of protest. Naturally, they were one African-American family racing primarily throughout the Jim Crow South. It's amazing, when if you really slow down and think about what's happening in the world right now. that my grandfather endured these same injustices, way back when in this particular sport. It's a sport we love as a family. It's a sport we love. There are people within the NASCAR family that we love and we care for, and they are white people. Okay, that needs to be said.
Yeah.
African Americans in this country have never been afforded the space to be pro us. By being pro us, it doesn't mean we're anti anybody else.
Right.
And so we ultimately are hoping for a seat at the table as NASCAR tries desperately to evolve into new viewership and new fandom. We're hoping for a seat at the table. I had a conversation with my father, who served as, in my opinion, he certainly was probably the first African American crew chief in the history of NASCAR. He's a graduate of North Carolina Central University. Right. When he was a student at Central, he was crew chief in my grandfather's racing operation as a student. And he would drive from McDougal. What was it? I can't remember the dorm. He would get me if I didn't know, but he lived on campus and he traveled from the dorm to the races, and he would crew chief, come back and be a student. He's a graduate.
Wow.
So, it's just an insight into who he was as a man, right? And where his earnings went. I travel the country speaking. I have to discuss these things. And the question that came back, the original question was, what do I have to talk about? Jacksonville 200 race is one of the major things I talk about, right? But I'm not sure my grandfather would even be recognized had he not won that race. I'm not so sure he would even be enshrined as such or crystallized as such, just from being the first African American driver in general, right?
Right.
He won too. He won 128 races in the divisions leading up to NASCAR before he began to race in NASCAR. So it's also this weird ideology that he only won one time. He went in the winner's circle 128 times against many of the same guys that were racing in NASCAR.
Right.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Are there any lessons, I guess, from your father and your grandfather about their NASCAR experience that they kind of instilled in you, and as you were growing up, that you carry on and you use in your day-to-day life?
Absolutely. I'm a former school teacher. I'm a former school teacher and basketball coach. I coached basketball at Word of God Christian Academy, and I also coached at Body of Christ Christian Academy. My father is a legendary basketball coach in the state of Virginia. And, a lot of the sayings that I talk to my former teammates all the time, but a lot of them didn't really realize who my grandfather was when they were in high school. And so now when we talk, they laugh because the way he prepared us for games was exactly how they prepared to go to races. Tons of film study, tons of different special game scenarios and preparations. We were better conditioned than most athletes. I went to a very small high school and we played a lot of bigger schools, and we would jump into that 1-2-1 full court press, man. But a lot of preparation came with that. So to answer the question, some of the things he would say was, you can't swim standing on the bank. These are some of his sayings. Every is not gone. He would say, be quick, but don't hurry. He would say things like, one of my favorite sayings is that if it's hard to do it today. But if it's impossible, do it tomorrow. These are things that were plugged into our psyche and our mindset. Right. I've been able to take that recipe, Jasmine, and kind of translate it into the youth I serve. The Wendell Scott Foundation, we work with youth that are in the trenches of society. We work with youth that are perceived to be outcast, or youth that struggle within the judicial teen system, or youth that are identified as truant within public school systems. So all we do is trench work, right? And so my grandfather's legacy, it still applies to this day. There right now 16, 17, 14, 15-year-old kids who can tell you exactly who Wendell Scott is and why his legacy is so much to him and why it inspires him to this day. And that's how I know, that his legacy is uber special,
Go ahead, Chucky. I know you got some questions.
Yeah, I was basically had some comments that the saying be fast but not in a hurry.
Be
That's
fast.
one that but don't be in a hurry. So that's one that I use today as I'm coaching kids.
Okay.
And Earl and I was talking yesterday, and I asked a question, and I'm asking you this question: does your grandfather have a statue anywhere?
He does not have a statue. That's a great question.
Okay.
He does not have a statue anywhere. One of the tracks that he was denied entry into for a great portion of his career, which is Darlington Motor Speedway in South Carolina. I have to say, the president of the racetrack is a good man, and he has led one of the more robust levels of honoring my grandfather that I've seen from others. So if you go to Darlington, there's a wonderful homage to my grandfather in the VIP area, where the VIP people arrive. There's a wonderful homage to my grandfather there. Richmond Speedway in Richmond, Virginia, 2 years ago, they unveiled a nice picture mural type of scenario inside of the pits in homage to my grandfather. But no, Chucky, there is not a statue to my knowledge. The garage where Scott Racing took place, which is our family's home house where we still reside and live today, is a historic landmark. It's registered as a historic landmark. But that would probably be the closest thing that we have.
And that's in Danville, right?
Yes, it's in Danville.
We gotta make a field trip up there one day and check
I would love
out,
for you guys to come, man. The Danville Expressway. Also, 2 years ago, we were able to work with our city officials here in the Virginia Department of Transportation, and we were able to have the name of the Danville Expressway changed to the Wendell Scott Expressway. One of the things coming out of North Carolina, that corridor between North Carolina connecting North Carolina to Lynchburg and Roanoke and Martinsville, Virginia, and Durham. That corridor is now named after my grandfather. And then the community in the street that we grew up on is also called the Wendell Scott Community and Wendell Scott Drive.
How does that feel? I'm honored in so many different ways.
Jasmine, until I got married and had children, it was just more like kind of running just something. It was kind of like my total life experience. But being able to share that with my family and seeing how much pride my wife takes in my grandfather's legacy, which ultimately is her legacy as well. But seeing how much pride she takes in it, and then being able to share stories and memories with my sons. I have Warrick Jr., he's 10, and I have little Wendell, actually. He's named after my uncle and my grandfather at the same time. You say get you somebody that can do both, so he's doing both. I'm able to point to him and show him, and then walk around the property and still reminisce. And I miss my grandfather sorely. He passed away when I was 13 years old, and I realized that it is one of those things that I've never gotten over.
Right.
I realize that now. He helped raise me. He took me to school in the mornings, picked me up in the afternoons. I spent like I mentioned before, my father was a basketball coach and my mother was a school teacher too. So their afternoons, if you know about education and coaching sports, right? Those afternoons are you're practicing and dropping off, players on your team and stuff. And the coach has to be the last one to leave the gym. So I spent out of 100% of my childhood, I probably spent 40% of my childhood directly with my grandmother and my grandfather.
Yeah.
Well,
I know. I think it was 2 weeks ago on a Saturday. I was watching Martin McGee, Martin Smith, and you was on. You came on. You came on that show on ESPN, and I was kind of moved. It's funny. I was moved because it was right when it was the whole thing around, of course, Bubba and the Confederate flag, things of that nature. How has those guys like that and NASCAR in general embraced you and your grandfather's legacy?
Pats on the back.
Okay.
Nothing profound to speak of. I'm not gonna make anything up. I'll pose a perspective to you in reverse. And because everything I say, I rely on fact. You can go back and look and see what our family has done for the sport and for NASCAR. And you can look at documentaries, umpteen documentaries and special news articles and special interviews where we have promoted the sport and what they've attempted to do with diversity. And we've also been very clear on where we stand with regards to Darrell, which is we love him and we want nothing.
Bubba, by the way.
We call him
Yeah.
you know, we love him and we want nothing but the best for him. And I just think he came into the sport as a young man, and he's finding his way and making his own stances as he gets older. I was talking to Marty and Ryan, and they were asking me what my NASCAR experience was like, and I just was saying, we don't really know a lot of those NASCAR families and stuff. The synergy that exists within that NASCAR bubble. We've essentially been locked out of that synergy in the years. So like I said, I won't make anything up. I don't have any profound stories to share about any particular affiliations or good times. I will say that we have a rather significant kinship with the Petty family. I think a lot of Richard Petty. My father always talked about how kind his wife was. The late Miss Linda Petty. How she and my grandmother had a really strong relationship. So how generationally, if your grandmother's,
that's right,
kind of trickles down. Our most recent foray into the world of NASCAR last year was doing Kyle Petty's show, Coffee with Kyle, and I did some spot work with our NBC Sports at the Martinsville race. But what should happen is not happen. Let's not sugarcoat anything, right? The synergy exists. It has not happened.
Well, the only reason I asked because it came across as if, particularly Marty, you guys were, were friends, and I just asked. I just want to know what it said. That was.
Well, I'm in the sport before he's in the sport.
Right.
I'm born in it, and when different personalities enter the sport, I see him a couple of times a year. See him at races. See him at the NASCAR Hall of Fame ceremony, NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony thing. We see him. And for me, being Wendell Scott's grandson, wanting connectivity, when I see a journalist, I search for connectivity because I want them to arm themselves with my grandfather's legacy. If you're a journalist in NASCAR, you must be in Wendell Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And so just wanting to get to know him and seeing where he lies. I think he's a good dude. My daughter's a sprinter for Radford University, and he's a graduate of Radford University. I just, in my heart of hearts, I feel like one mistake that NASCAR is making is that they have to allow African Americans who have lived a certain experience, a certain life experience. They have to allow African Americans to articulate the direction right now. Mm-hmm. And so I've watched many sports sessions and ESPN clips and Fox. I watch all these things, and I'm watching whole segments go by and no one mentions my grandfather's name.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No one says his name. No one talks about his struggles and his sacrifices. And you can't get to Bubba till you get to him. You can't understand what he's going through or what he made. You can't understand it, until you understand Wendell. Wendell Scott built the ultimate bridge for diversity.
Right.
Within the world of sports. He sits in the same lane as Jackie Robinson and Arthur Ashe and and William Rudolph and John Carlos and these people. He sits in that same lane. And every other major sports organization has figured out a way to honor, their forefathers.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, NASCAR has not done a good enough job with regards to celebrating my grandfather's successes.
Good point.
Yeah, and that's why I asked. That's why I had asked the question. Did he have a statue? Because like when me and Errol was talking on the phone, or Errol and I, let me be correct, my English. Errol and I were talking on the phone yesterday. I asked that question because I was like, can you imagine what he went through?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and I mentioned Jackie Robinson. Can you imagine if they don't tolerate what's happening, if they don't sacrifice, if your grandfather doesn't do what he did, there may be no Bubba.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like you said, like you can't talk about, you know, any other African American without first mentioning,
You can't do it. You know,
you can't do it. It's impossible.
I challenge any of your viewers to just Google now NASCAR Drive for Diversity.
Right.
You won't see a picture of my grandfather.
Mm.
You won't see a mention. Go to Revolutionary Racing, the third party that they work with on the Drive for Diversity initiative for so long. You won't see an homage or a reference, and so, you know, I don't live in the past.
Right. Right.
You know, I don't live in the past. You know,
right.
I'm just hoping for an opportunity to, you know, provide a certain evolution of, you know, what Wendell Scott stood for and why it's so relevant. I mean, no one's won yet but him.
Right.
Wow. Think about that. Go ahead, Mac. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of leads me to today, right? And understanding historical significance of what your grandfather did. Let's keep in mind, he didn't just race. He won. He was a champion. You know, if he wasn't crowned, he should have been crowned a champion in the sport. Talk about their outreach or anyone's outreach to say, how can you help us, you know, increase minority participation in the sport? What should that look like? You go around the country all year long and you talk to young people, you talk to inner city people, you talk to all types of people. And I'm here to tell you, there are a lot of African Americans that do appreciate, you know, motorsports. Right. I mean, there are a lot. Yeah. And one of the things that's kept them away from the sport is we don't feel like we have a place or we're welcome in the sport.
Right.
Just the mere story of your grandfather says, oh, wait a minute, we do have a place in this sport. Has there been any outreach? And if there hasn't been, is there anything that you guys have been thinking about trying to say, here's some things you can do to increase minority participation in your sport or in our sport?
There are two entities to speak of, you know, in my opinion, and, you know, no disrespect to any of those entities, but there are two entities that exist, which is Revolutionary Racing and Rev Racing and the Diversity Initiative. My uncle Wendell Jr. was a part of NASCAR's Diversity Initiative when it first kicked off. He's no longer with them, but he was one of the people who helped set up the framework for that diversity initiative. I have no problem in being transparent and saying that I have reached out to NASCAR. I want to say it's been almost 12 years now where I've been reaching out, hoping to participate in a diversity capacity. In particular, you know, championing my grandfather's legacy and advocating and helping the general public learn what he was and what he was all about. So what we do is we found that the great neutralizer is iRacing, esports. So one of the things that the Wendell Scott Foundation does is we provide race car simulation training and race car simulation curriculums in the form of summer camps and specialized programming for inner city youth and at-risk youth, where we're able to get them in race car simulators and let them begin to feel physics and learn the science behind race car driving. And one of the most rewarding things about that is not that we're identifying or finding any new NASCAR drivers. What we're finding engineers is what we're identifying. There's a gentleman that's in NASCAR's diversity initiative right now, and I always say the young man's first name wrong. If he's watching, please forgive me, but his name is Roger Caruth, if I'm not mistaken. Roger Caruth. Outstanding young man. I think he's the only African American that's a part of Drive for Diversity this year, which is strange.
That's very strange.
I think if you go back and look at Drive for Diversity over the past 2 or 3 years, you'll find people that qualify as minorities, et cetera, but you just don't find a clear-cut African American kid.
Yeah, we found that out earlier this year. And
but Mr. Caruth is that this young man goes to Winston-Salem State University. Right?
Oh, nice.
And if I'm not mistaken, Winston-Salem has a motorsports positioning or stance with Bowman Gray Stadium being there.
Okay, yeah.
So see young men like that, they need my grandfather's legacy more than Darrell needs it. you see, need access to it. Need to be able to use it as reference points or use it to attract sponsors. NASCAR, the myth is that it's a money game. That's true. That's very true. But it also comes down to being chosen. Bubba was chosen. If you're chosen to participate in the sport, iRacing and esports helps level the playing field. You don't have to go out there and tear up the car all week long. A good portion of what you need to know, you can learn what my father always called skull session, right? Learning the aerodynamics of the car, studying the track you're going to perform at, and using the iRacing and the simulation to help prepare you for that. So now it just comes down to if a sponsor or a corporation is willing to attach their dollars, to the next minority. And I'm talking about, African-American female or male.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Warrick, this is, there's so many questions, but let me jump on this because I'm curious. When you met Daryl / Bubba Waters, what was your initial reaction? Or what was the conversation like when you guys first met?
When we first met, it was high and by.
Okay.
Because he was part of diversity. He was part of, he's got people around him.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, it was high and by. My Uncle Wendell is the first person I knew in the family that had a relationship with him. If I'm not mistaken, they are still close to this day. So it was just really I'm with you and I support you, and I've always longed for the opportunity to build with him and break bread with him so I could pour into him what my grandfather poured into me. But I feel like he needs that. When I do documentaries or interviews, I speak very strongly about Daryl. Because I believe in him. And I know that he can really race a car. He's not one of those guys that can't race. See, some people try to call him a token.
Okay.
Because he doesn't always place very high.
Right.
But if you understand the sport, you understand he's not particularly running the same thing the rest of those guys are running.
Gotcha.
And when he's got a fast car, he runs at the top of the field. We just saw that in Talladega.
Yeah, I thought he was leading for a few seconds there. Yesterday.
His Daytona finish, when he finished second, that was not a fluke. He can race.
Okay.
I've seen him times since then. When I go to tracks, I always seek him out and go dap him up and let him know, we with him, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I can do. There have been other drivers in the sport who had a chance to absorb my grandfather's legacy or their knowledge, and they denied that opportunity. Then they chose not to go that route. And so, what Scott Racing did from the 1950s to 1973 is special.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's unimaginable.
Yeah.
You really can't. You're talking about a guy who at different times in his career was poisoned. Okay, at different times in his career, his tires were slashed from the inside with the hopes that his what'll happen to you in a race car if 2 or 3 of your tires burst at the same time?
Yeah.
There are times where he had the total pistol while he was driving. That's a historic fact. He pulled a pistol on Jack Smith because Jack Smith kept trying to kill him. That was during that was like they were riding around the track. Going out on it, told him, this shit is gonna stop
all day long.
That's right.
No problem. We're good.
These are, that's the time. This is right now. See, sometimes too much sugar on it, bad for your teeth.
I like that. Let's open this thing up, guys.
He said he's bad for your teeth. Too much sugar. So go ahead, Jazz.
All right, Jazz.
So, do you feel that NASCAR can become this more inclusive sport where you see more Black racers, more Black analysts and announcers? Even though NASCAR has continually struggled just as a sport in itself, like aside from everything that's been going on these last few weeks? I
do feel like NASCAR has a wonderful opportunity to fill a special void. I think not to speak in generalizations, but I don't know many African Americans who don't like cars,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
or don't have disposable income, or are not consumers of things that we love. And I mean, it comes down to it. I'd like to ask you: have you ever been to a race?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you feel about it when you went? What was your take on it?
I loved it.
You loved it, right? But you had to go. You had to go to love it, and you had to. I'm assuming you had to. When you went, you probably had to overlook some things, right? That weren't like those line and stuff, right? So what I said on an ESPN interview when everything first happened, I said that for the NASCAR fan who never went to the races because of the Confederate flag and because of the Confederate presence, there's absolutely no need now to not go to a race. I mean, I see a huge opportunity for NASCAR to evolve. I want to say that I think the real change comes when we begin to see African American crew chiefs. African Americans are no less proficient in engineering or mathematics or dynamics, any of that, right? So that's one obvious change you'll see. Another obvious change you'll see is that you'll begin to see more African American drivers in the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and dare I say even the big leagues. Anytime there's only one of something, it essentially means that you haven't figured it out yet. Right? In the business world, we call it scaling. Right? If you look at how long Drive for Diversity has been around, they have not figured out a way to scale their initiative. Right? That's just a fact. That's not a knock. That's a fact, right? There have been other African American drivers that have come before Michael Cherry, Morty Buckles, several guys that have come that just didn't get the shot that Bubba got. So I do see an opportunity. I think NASCAR should involve more African American lifestyle outlets and try to get more diversity that way. And then I think a Wendell Scott movie would be a big help to help lead the push in creating new fans and new fandom.
That leads me to a question that I was just thinking as we talked about growing the sport. Let's like you say, take some of the sugar out of this thing. Let's deal with it. So African American ownership. Why can't we own a team? Why can't we own a car? Why can't we have a car?
I think the success of Dave Stewart and Worldwide Technology has shown that you can invest in motorsports and you can compete. I mean, if you're not familiar with Worldwide Technology, David Stewart is one of, I want to say 6 or 7 African American billionaires that exist in America. And his company is responsible for actually allowing Bubba, or should I say Darrell, to run full time. It happened last year, I think.
Yeah.
There was an announcement that he would be competing for the rest of the year, whether it was thanks to Worldwide Technology, and they're still involved with Darrell now, even to this day. So that's an idea. There have been many African Americans that have tried to exist in the sport of NASCAR. Are you all aware of that?
No, I was gonna say no, I'm not.
I thought, but then Brad Darley had, maybe that's a Truck Series Brad Darley had.
Right. But I mean, even beyond Brad, Brad had a sweet spot. He had a sweet spot because of his understanding of the culture.
Yes, he grew up with the culture
that came with NASCAR, and then who he was able to become as a man, himself. I don't think it was. I have to imagine, Chucky, at some point he sat at the table and was willing to go in a little deeper. Right. Maybe the last person that sat at the table. I mean, we worked with the great Julius Erving and Joe. Then when they first started their race team, we were involved with North Carolina A&T when they first started their motorsports program. We were involved with Winston-Salem State when they first started their motorsports program. Jesse Jackson has tried to penetrate the sport of NASCAR, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, different people have tried to penetrate the sport. You have to be more than a name brand. Of course, times have changed considerably. social media is one of the great neutralizers, right? If you're on the right side of the right, you're good money. But if you're not, oh boy, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you know, social media has increased the bandwidth too. So, you know, I encourage brothers like LeBron James and Maverick, you know, people like that to go ahead and invest some dollars, you know, in the sport.
Yep.
And we'll just see what happens. It just comes down to an investment.
Mm.
Right. It comes down to an investment.
Wow.
And when we talk about that dollar bill, I think you find out, you know, what one's true worth is.
Yeah.
and also what partners they have access to.
Right.
We found out that Dave Stewart was real.
Yeah.
And it isn't just about the money, it's about the synergy that exists in the Fortune 1000 world and the partners that you're able to bring in order to support that vision, right? So I consider him personally to be a leader, you know, in that aspect.
Wow.
Nice.
Oh man, this is an unbelievable conversation. Again, so many questions. Hang out with Warrick Scott Sr. So if you had to 3 or 4 bullets or 1 or 2 points that people say, well, Warrick, you can have anything you want in the sport, you can do anything you want to do. What would those 2 things be as relates to NASCAR?
I would. Hey Earl, man, you about to make me give it all away.
No, but hey, if it's confidential, just text me.
I'm gonna say, hey, look, this not one of those we got to pay for, is it?
No, let's talk around it. You want to talk specifically about?
No. Well, you know, one thing I think could be a great thing is that for Wendell Scott to receive a reenactment scenario with regards to his first victory in NASCAR, the Jacksonville 200. I just think. I think the Daytona 500 is the first race of the season. It's probably one of NASCAR's most important races, and because the Jacksonville Speedway no longer exists, I find it synergistically important that maybe our family, etc., is presented with an official rollout ceremony where we kind of reenact what it would have been, you know, for Wendell. I would love to see my aunt and my uncles and my father be able to get a Wendell Scott replica car and take a victory lap around the track. And I love to be able to sit there and cry and be emotional and embrace it. You know, that's what the things I would like to see. I would like to see a Wendell Scott race. I would like to see a Wendell Scott 500 or 400 or 600 in his honor that would take place annually every year to keep that momentum going. Okay, so that's one thing.
Let me ask you a question, not to cut you off, but don't you think that the climate right now is more conducive for something like that? I think, you know, seems like obviously what's happened the last couple of weeks or so.
I think with regards to my grandfather, to be honest, like a Wendell Scott race, I think the climate was conducive 10, 15 years ago.
I get it.
You're talking about a guy who, when we talk about the racial dynamic, right, we're talking about white folks, black folks.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He operated within the subcultures of both races better than anybody I've ever seen. You talk about the Confederate flag. You know, I grew up around a bunch of Confederate flags, still all today. But the way he prepared us for life, you know, if we saw that on your clothes or on your wallet or on the back of your car, that didn't make me hate you.
Right.
Right.
Okay. That didn't make me hate you. That didn't even particularly make me not want to pursue a relationship with you.
Right.
It's just one of those things you know about somebody. Just like anything else. You know, there's some janky things about people that, you know, this particular janky thing, unfortunately, has a lot to do and everything to do with the representation of oppressing and murdering and killing our
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But had he trained us to freeze up every time we saw a Confederate flag, and he trained us to be so dejected by its presence that we cannot think or execute or be successful on our own, then the flag won.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I just would like to see my family enshrined Scott Racing the first original African American pit crew in the history of NASCAR. They need to be enshrined, and their story and their struggles need to be told, and the things they endured and the things they went through need to be told. You know what I mean? And then honestly, I would like to establish a relationship with Puma. You know, my grandfather raced in Pumas, and we have those.
Wait a minute now. What year was this?
He raced in the 60s in Pumas. You know, we have pictures.
Wow.
And we also have we actually have the shoes. We have the shoes.
Outstanding. Wow. Good stuff.
And so I say Puma because what's needed in the African American community are as many heroes as possible. Apparel companies and shoe companies, when they stand behind someone's legacy, the legacy grows like wildfire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, hey Chucky, do you know anybody from Puma?
Hey, we'll get to work on it.
Chucky, I know you play for the Rockets. I know Ralph Sampson is a native Virginian. He has a signature shoe. Clyde Frazier has a signature Puma shoe. Pele has a signature Puma shoe. And Puma also has an entire race line, you know, for racing. So I'm not pulling straws here. I'm dead serious.
Right.
You know, we hope to connect Wendell Scott's legacy to Fortune 1000 and Fortune 500 entities going forward, so we can be to our community in a scalable manner what Arthur Ashe has meant to his community, and what Jackie Robinson and Dr. King and those alike have meant to their communities. Part of the reason they're able to continue to help families and help youth and provide levels of understanding is because they've been supported by corporations.
Right.
Very good. That's very
You know
good.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I want the race. I want the Wendell Scott race, so we can all take that day off, and everybody be able, you know, we can all go to that race. That's the one I want.
And it would be a day, and it would be a race of unity.
That's right. That's right.
And even the Confederate flag people are invited.
Yeah, come on.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's real. That's real.
Yeah,
Because see, that's the thing. You know, your purpose with history is to properly place it where it needs to be. You don't erase or eradicate.
No, you're right.
That's right.
Put it where it should be.
Right.
That is a part. If there's no struggle, there's no Wendell Scott. We never ran from the struggle.
Right.
We never sponsored. We never that. You know?
Wow. This is an unbelievable conversation and very timely, given what's going on in the country right now. Again, open up some more questions, guys. Anybody?
I have a question just about is there an exhibit? I know in Charlotte they have the Hall of Fame there, but does your grandfather have an exhibit or anything there? I was there. It was an early radio show, so I really didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, his presence can be found in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. You know, he's in the Hall of Fame room. If I'm not mistaken, his racing uniform and a couple of pieces from his car are displayed prevalently, you know, in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So yeah, there's an exhibit on him. He's also a member of the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, which is a global distinction that is oftentimes grazed over in favor of NASCAR's Hall of Fame. But before he was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, he was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. People like Mario Andretti, you know, like that. So yeah, there are different exhibits in the Black History Museum of Richmond, in Richmond, Virginia. The Black History Museum of Virginia in Richmond, Virginia. There's a interactive touchscreen exhibit called Race to Win that we helped design on my grandfather, where users can paint, build, or race one of Wendell Scott cars. So there are different things. What
about the African American Museum in DC?
I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah.
There is there's something on him in there.
Okay. So it could be better. That seems like you mean.
Yeah. There's a slight reference to Wendell Scott in the African American Museum.
That's slight.
Yeah, but
that's the problem. It should be prominent there.
I'm quickly realizing we need two African American museums.
Right. We're in the process of securing a location for the Wendell Scott Innovation Center and Museum that would be housed in downtown Danville, Virginia.
Okay.
On a Warrick building where African Americans were also historically denied services and access or whatever. So we're working towards a 20,000 square foot building.
Okay.
We are kicking off our capital campaign in order to raise monies and further establish the Wendell Scott Museum, which is also a huge part of why we also need an official trophy from NASCAR. This is, people don't realize by us not receiving our just due, that's an asset that's being taken away from our lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Big piece.
So what does that look like, requesting that from NASCAR? Like, is it as simple as an email, or what have those conversations in the past been like?
I wish it was as simple as an email. Jasmine, I don't know if you saw or had time to watch the video that I did. It really kind of kickstarted this whole thing. It's on YouTube, where I'm reading a letter that I wrote to Brian France when he was still the CEO of NASCAR. And this is from 2 years ago. Mr. France encountered some personal issues shortly thereafter and was not involved in leadership capacity with NASCAR. However, I was able to speak with the leadership that's in place now. And I'll just say that my request was not met with compliance, as evidence of me sitting here today. And I wish I could go a little deeper.
Yeah.
I wish I could go a tad. I do. I wish I could go a tad bit deeper.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just think it's so weird that it's even a hiccup to get over. Like,
Right. And so that's why platforms like this are so important.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Because we can't spend all of our time using social media to make that point. Like yourself and others, we can do it we can do it together, right? We can do it together. Those like minds, those people who have a passion for African American history and what we went through in general. For those who don't connect to my grandfather through NASCAR because they're not NASCAR fans, I ask you to connect to my grandfather as a man.
Wow.
Connect to him that way.
Nice.
Connect to him as a father.
Very nice.
All parents that are worth their weight in gold, everything they do is for their children.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not well at memorizing Bible verses, et cetera, but I think it's somewhere in the Bible that says that a man who lived his life right, a godly man, his children's children. Right.
Absolutely.
Myself and my brothers and my sister D, Chucky, and we're the children's children.
Right.
You know what I mean? So everything we've ever done has been a faith walk.
Wow.
That's all we've ever had.
Absolutely.
And so we have faith that the tide will turn. I'm looking forward to coming back on with you guys and talking about the progression and the successes.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? And I invite you, please join us. Everybody watching, please join us on social media. Please like us and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's a weird game, but followers matter. When we're dealing with entities and people, they're looking to see how many people follow and how many people are sharing and stuff like that. So we encourage everyone to join us, in our mission to get my grandfather his just due. Like this week, right? But that.
So Warrick, so what's your handle on Twitter?
By the way, I want to drop that.
Sell you, baby.
The Bears.
Oh, you a bear? Okay,
right. I believe it.
That explains it.
Okay, man.
Well, let me ask you a question though. Have you reached out to Willie Gary at all? Your fellow alum.
You trying to get me in trouble?
Okay, don't worry about it.
He tried.
Shout out to Ali. I went to Shaw with Ali. His son, good friend, stay cool, good dude. Dr. Gary knows about my grandfather. He empowered us several times. When I was he had the Black Family Channel at one time, and he was you know, and that kind of or whatever. But no, we got love and respect for the Garrett.
Yeah. What's your Twitter handle and social media handle so people can follow you?
Oh man, we're on Facebook. We're the Wendell Scott Foundation. Simply on Facebook. On Twitter, what are we? Let me look it up.
Wendell _34.
There you go, Jasmine.
Jasmine, she on top of it. She know now.
Wendell, there you go. And on Instagram, we are Wendell Scott _Foundation, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know about that one.
I'm gonna try to figure it out. But yeah, you stumped me right there, Earl.
I'm sorry, man. But I knew Jasmine had your back up on the Twitter because she all over that.
Good deal. Hold on a second. On Instagram though, we are Wendell _Scott _Foundation. Okay, on Instagram we're Wendell _Scott
Wow.
Information on us there. It talks about our programming, talks about our galas and the events we have. It has vintage pictures of my grandfather. So please, just everybody, just join in with us. And please support us. Please love on my grandfather's legacy. His children are still alive. They're watching. And they were a part of Sky Racing. Sky Racing was a family affair. So the celebration that's due. They'll be there and be the beneficiaries of it.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to tell you guys what to sell, but I could use a Wendell Scott jacket. If you haven't put it up there, let me be the first person.
All right, we're gonna hook it up, and I'm gonna get my assistant Reggie to reach out to you, and we're gonna get you all some merch and get you guys true up.
Actually, that's a good idea, Jasmine.
Yeah,
I like that.
Get you guys true up.
And I'll make sure the next NASCAR race we all go to, I guarantee you will be well represented. I guarantee you.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate that.
Chucky, any final thoughts? Because again, Warrick, we promised 1 hour, so I want to hold you any longer than that. But just the final thoughts, Chucky, at all from you?
Yeah. My final thought is that I think that every NASCAR racer that comes through NASCAR should know the history of NASCAR and should know about your grandfather. That's my personal. I mean, every one of them before they get in a car to race,
right?
They should know the history of the sport. I know, like in basketball, we learn the history of the guys before us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that it should be the same thing, especially in NASCAR where we all know Charlie Scott was the first. Black at Carolina. We all know that. Even if we didn't go to Carolina, we know that.
Right.
So it should be the same thing in NASCAR. If you're gonna be drag racing, you need to know, your grandfather because he's part of racing.
Absolutely.
So, that's my final thought. And one last thing I wanted to say. Quentin Jackson sent me a text message. So I didn't get to read it yet, but Quentin Jackson sent me a text message, and I'm going to read it. But I know he probably tell you what's up.
That's good right there. That's good, bro. Shout out to Quentin and my nephew, Quentin Jr. Quentin is playing his last year at Loyola Marymount. Just graduated from Temple University.
Oh yeah.
Last year at Loyola, and my nephew Daniel is in his junior year at Florida International. Down there playing in free safety with Butch Davis. I'm real proud of those young men, Earl. I mean, I got baptized in the Raleigh through being the boys, man, back in '87.
Oh yeah.
I was a little Warrick then, running around getting in trouble at the cookout. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, Chucky, it's always good to see you, man. I look up to you. You always been strong in the community, man. It's always been readily accessible. You know what I mean? And, I hope the guys that are out there jumping now, PJ and John and those guys. I hope they're taking a page out of your book, man, because you really are a bright spot in the community, man. I've always really looked up to you. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. And PJ and John always show me love, man. They always show me love.
Man, they're good dudes, man. They're good dudes, man. So, man. So listen, man, thank y'all for having me. Come back anytime, man. Anytime you all.
Yeah, we're gonna do something. We're gonna keep this conversation going because it's not gonna go away, and we're gonna keep it in front of people. So we're gonna be engaging you doing our morning show as well. Just kind of keep it going because I think it's important that we keep this in front of people.
Well, I'm gonna hold y'all to that. Hey, listen. Also, 2 places you can donate to support. Wendell Scott Foundation. Naturally, please donate, support. Anything is plenty. We are raising money for our programming, which is Steering the STEM, where we're using iRacing and race car simulation to train students. And because of the COVID, we're being forced to kind of transition to virtual offerings. And so figuring out cost and efficiency on that end. And also, if you get a chance, also, if you're looking for a historically black college to donate or contribute to.
Go Shaw.
Hey, man.
Shaw, you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, you got it.
Hold on. I was just trying to remember, Reese. He looked familiar. Did you play in the Chavis Hayes Summer League?
I played.
You played against him.
Yeah, you know what? I knew you. You know what? Wait, I'm gonna call you when we finish.
I was in high school. Playing for
Yeah, you and PJ Tucker, both of y'all was in high school. Yeah. I knew you.
Hey, Ward, I'm leaving you with this. Don't take this the wrong way. Won't get ready to say. But I watched Grease Lightning today, and I haven't seen your grandmother before, but I know Pam Grier played your grandmother in that movie. And I'm just saying. I'm just gonna put it out there. I had to ask you.
Be careful what I say right now, because the baddest woman on the face of the earth is Shanique Scott. So, let me say that. Miss Grier follows us. She follows us.
Man. K-Mac, Chucky, come on, somebody. It's just me. Okay, it's just me. Okay, all right, it's just me then.
My grandmother, man, my grandmother was the standard of beauty.
I heard that. I heard that. That's outstanding.
Inside and out. Real.
Well, I guess Pam Grier was a great pick.
Yeah. No doubt.
Hey, man. Hey, Warrick, this has been truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving your time. We can feel your passion behind your grandfather, man, and it's real, it is authentic, and there's nothing fake about that. And we're gonna do what we can to help you guys out. And we appreciate your time you're giving us, man. We'll be in touch with you guys, okay?
Absolutely, man.
Outstanding. Take care, guys.
All the way, and a trip you can make in a day. Y'all be easy.
Take care.
All right, Warrick.
Take care.